Because we the POTNUS doesn't mean that we thoughtless. Don't want to be blessed because of no one else. Only want to be just for what we do ourselves. Up in the studio all day and night, making these beats while we're hiding kites.
This is my good friend Jared. How you doing, Jared?
Doing great, John. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I'll give a quick rundown. Jared and I, we grew up together and went to school together. A memory of Jared that I have is of, I believe you were on my flag football team. And didn't you play flag football?
Taking it back. That's hilarious, taking me back. Remember back when we were the age where all we could aspire to want to be in life was a professional athlete?
Yeah.
It was like, what are you going to be when you grow up? Well, this year it's football. Next year I might think it's basketball, whatever. Yeah, but just...
Yeah. You know, dreams of making it big in some form or fashion, right?
Right. Yeah. All going to be stars, right?
Yeah. And thinking back, not having to, rack your brain so hard, like my earliest memory ever, but what are some of your earliest memories growing up? And kind of start off from there and kind of give us a little bit about your background, where you're from.
That's a great question, and I knew you were going to ask it, so I've been sitting with it for a while. It made me just actually wonder, what is memory? Because I think I used to cling on to this thing that was my first memory of probably when I was like 2 or 3, and it had to do with this rocking horse and a toy in the room, and my brother staying on the rocking horse, and he's throwing this, like, one of those balls that have the Velcro with the target, like he's doing this thing, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that's my first memory. I always tell people that's my first memory. And then one year I come across this picture and it's like the exact scene that I thought was my memory. And it's like, oh no, I just remembered the picture, or you remember these pictures, or you remember stories that other people tell you. So it starts to like solidify your memory. So I tried to like go through all those cobwebs and come up with something I could actually remember. In kindergarten and first grade, I actually grew up in Pittsburgh. And this is when like all the breakdancing movies came out. And so, go to school, come home, grab some cardboard, throw it on the sidewalk and start practicing, Beach Street breaking. The Thriller video came out. Me and my brother had like the whole neighborhood gathered in our court. Like, we're learning Thriller. We're doing the choreography today. Like that kind of shit. Like, that's what I remember. And it's interesting because I still... Beach Street's the best breaking movie of all of them. It's still the best, but just thinking about like that time, bringing people together in the neighborhood, like learning something that's performative, like that's like so foundational to like who I still want to be. Like I wanted to still bring people together and host a party or assign parts for people to learn something and come together and create something. So that was a trip to like try to drill it down to what it actually was. And that's what it is.
It's funny, see, because when I'm talking to you and you say that, and then it triggers all these memories for me. We used to, this is on vinyl records, and we'd listen to the Jackson 5. And I remember I had like the soundtrack to Breakin' as well. And my cousins would come over and we'd have like family events and we would do the same thing. We'd like play like Jackson 5 music and we'd choreograph little dance routines. And then we'd put on shows for the family. Yeah, same thing.
You got the little cassette and it came with a little fold out, like glossy, with like little steps, like here's how to do this move and here's how to do that move. And then you just watching MTV and like trying to fill in the blanks. You're hearing about Alfonso Ribeiro doing a head spin and breaking his neck, so you don't try that out because that's dangerous, right? It's like those little like urban myths like creep into suburbia, and
it's hilarious. Funny that you said Alfonso Ribeiro, because when you were talking about dancing in the street, I'm imagining the commercial of him with the Jacksons, but also the commercial,
like the Pepsi. Oh, the Who Broke My Window?
But the Who Broke My Window.
Oh, yeah.
They're playing softball in the street.
Isn't gonna be easy.
I got some kid's ball. Who broke my window?
Why is my stomach so nervous and queasy?
Who's it was? Oh my god, I have that whole thing memorized too.
There's honestly, so those are all Mormon Latter-day Saint PSA ads.
Yeah,
You need,
yeah,
if you haven't seen them in a while, there's a whole series of them. Go check them out.
yeah.
Each one,
With
like that's the famous one, but like there's one about the whole like choreograph thing in a classroom. I remember, so
that's
good,
wild, right? It
so
was
good.
that it was that it was the Mormons commercials and stuff, you know, and it had Alfonso Ribeiro, who was became miniature Michael Jackson, and they had like the budget to put on mainstream TV. I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of crazy, right?
just a little message telling people to be good, tell the
Yeah,
truth.
yeah,
You know, that's all.
yeah. Which is actually pretty cool,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that was the message. It was, you know, to, like, be honest. That's amazing. That's so funny. The other thing my memory got triggered was taking tapes and recording the different videos
yes,
and then rewinding them back and like
yes.
practicing the moves. And one of the big ones for me was Motown 25. And
That moonwalk,
when he did
that
the
moonwalk,
moonwalk,
that moonwalk.
and I remember I'm sitting there with my parents. It's Motown 25. It's just like, you know, the whole show was good. And you were waiting for Michael Jackson to come on, and then he comes on, does his thing, does the moonwalk, and we like freaked out. And I remember my parents were like, was the floor moving? Like, it's so funny how like,
Oh, Jamiroquai.
well, like, this is okay. They're special effects, right? You watch these old movies from the 80s and you watch the special effects and you realize to us back then that was we had never seen anything like that. But now you can even watch Jurassic Park and it seems kind of low budget.
Mm, yeah.
Where, you know, when it first
Oh,
came out, it was just, you know, like
when it first
Terminator.
came out at the Dome, when you went and saw it at the Dome and the surround sound, and oh,
Man, the Dome. Tell them about the Dome.
the Dome. So if you ever drive through Contra Costa County on 680, you go through a little town called Pleasant Hill, and there used to be a Century movie theater that was dome shaped, and I think there's still some. I know there was smaller domes up in Sacramento that I hope are still there, but this was like an epic, thousands of seats. It's now a Dick's Sporting Goods, appropriately named for the people who took over that space. But it was just the spot to see any movie. I easily saw Return of the Jedi when it first came out there. It's probably the first epic movie experience I can remember. But just everything that came out. And I remember specifically in high school, like any major blockbuster movie, Jurassic Park and anything that was around that era, you know, that's where you go see it because they had the biggest screen and all the sound effects. So
Yeah.
Dome.
And you had the Starcade right next door.
Oh, yes.
Little video arcade.
I
You could have.
remember I signed some petition to save the Dome for sure. It had become an art house towards the end because Century had moved in across the freeway at that other complex you're talking about, you know, new state of the art movie theaters. So they were just doing like artsy shit there, but still it's like my favorite place to go.
So, you know, you said you got into dancing and kind of performing as a kid. What other activities or art did you enjoy?
Yeah, I remember it was always like you said, family get-togethers. Me and my brother throwing down some cardboard, entertaining the family with whatever new latest things we got. And then at some point in elementary school, we started doing like class musicals. With someone in my class's mom would come in and teach us all, and you know that then culminated. Hilarious that you mentioned Mrs. Wilcox. In my fifth grade experience, she was my fifth grade teacher. She'd put on this like U.S. history themed show, you know, with the fifth grade classes. And so I remember doing something for that. I remember I was in some sort of square dance thing and I messed up, and my group, we couldn't remember where we were in the music, so we just stood there in the square and just looked at each other for the rest of the song. And to this day, if I see my square dance partner on the street, I know she's gonna like glare at me for messing that up, you know. back in the day. Sheila, I'll just say her name, Sheila. You might remember Sheila.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, so I remember doing that kind of stuff, and then when I got into middle school, um, I was still, interested in just playing sports all the time. I had given up. I played like trumpet in elementary school and French horn, but when you got into middle school and you had to do electives, it was like, do you want PE or are you going to be in band? And I was like, I'm not giving up PE. Like, when else am I going to play my sports, So I stopped playing music. And then they had that thing called service points. I don't know if you remember, like if you were in different clubs or did stuff, you could earn points. And at the end of the year, people with enough points got to go to Great America. So I was like on that, like that's going to happen. And I was in drama as like one of the electives that they have to rotate you through. And my teacher was doing auditions for the musical, and she encouraged me. She was like, I'd really like to see you audition for the musical. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I went away, and I came back at recess. I was like, wait, do you get service points for doing that? And she's like, yeah. I was like, I'm in. Like that's all I cared about. But it's interesting because I was into performing and enjoyed it, but never really saw myself in it. So it took like that kind of transaction to like officially get me in. But then once I was doing that, I was hooked. Just the idea of like bringing people together and like putting on a show, and you have that experience of like weeks of day in and day out building friendships while working on this project. It created structure to be social that I realized that I needed then. I think I still need now. Even it's like I prefer to hang out when there's like a task at hand, and like and then the social aspects come along with that. So I caught the theater bug and just started focusing on that as my main kind of creative outlet, whether it was on stage or leading things off stage, or even just doing the tech.
So after junior high, did you just go directly into it in high school? Kept it moving?
Yep, all in high school for sure. I remember there was a graduating senior who had been in charge of all the tech, and he was like looking to like train somebody else up and get them started. And I was like, I'll do that, learning about like lights and sounds. And I still working on cassette tape, things for sound cues back then. So doing the 2 tape deck, recording from one to the other to make sound cues happen. And, we just had a little classroom with a couple of lights. So it wasn't anything extravagant, but just to like have that control and push the buttons as a freshman was great, because all the seniors and juniors were the ones directing the plays and being in them. So, but then just, started to be in more shows, and always had, all my friends were always older than me, and so class of 93, class of 94, my friends in drama were there, and just always looking up to the folks ahead of me and trying to help out where I can, building sets, doing lights and sound, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then after high school, did you go to college for any of that, or?
Yeah. In high school, I started auditioning for stuff outside of school and was doing local productions, and then just went to DVC and was doing drama there. And I went to some college theater festival in Arizona that year, and there was these auditions that usually people would audition to get like summer jobs performing at like an outdoor festival or something. So I just did it just to see what it was. And a theater company in Kentucky was there, and they were actually looking to hire a company of young people for the full next school year. And I had never expanded my mind to that as an option, and just got to went and listened to the info session. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want to be doing right now. I'm going to go work at a professional regional theater for a year. I'm going to take classes in acting. I'm going to get to shadow all the different departments, behind the scenes. I'm going to be in main stage productions. This is perfect to see if the life in the theater is what I want to be doing. So
that's awesome.
I took a year off from college to go do that after my freshman year in college. And and it was exactly what I wanted and more. And I was working with professional people that were coming in from New York, and we were working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for no pay, and I loved it. And like, you know, that was a clear sign that like I was in the right place. And it was, you know, a genuine love to just plug in anywhere. It's like, you need someone backstage, great, I'll do it. You need someone to write the thing today, awesome. Direct it, awesome. Be the star, let's go. You know, like, there's just there's a collaborative nature of working within theater that's possible, that I really glommed onto and continue to hold on to this day. I don't like those kind of productions where it's very top down, egotistical director says how you do it and then you go do that. You know, I much prefer collaborative spaces where people are bringing their best to the situation, and then sure, it's up to a director who maybe is acting like an editor more than anything to like bring out the best of everyone for the final product. Yeah, that was college. And then when I got back to college, it was okay, I think I need to get a degree still, but I'm gonna do it as fast as I can, and then get out there and start working. So all my friends after that year in Kentucky moved to New York and started a theater company. I was really pulled to join them. I was only 19 at the time, 18 or 19 or 20. I was like, no, I should go back home, get a degree. And it's a trip, because had I gone, I would have been ground zero for 9/11, basically. Wow. At that point. Like, many of my friends were, like, one of them lived on like Wall Street blocks from ground zero, you know, like, so just thinking about, when you think back on life and the paths, when you come to a place where there's two paths and you choose this one, you always think like, what would have happened if I had, you know, it's like in the scenario where I left Kentucky and moved to New York, I can't imagine what my life would be like now.
So the Kentucky, it was a Kentucky theater group, and they came to California to recruit people.
Yeah, it's a professional regional theater. It's called Actors Theater of Louisville, and they actually have an international reputation because they do a new play festival every year called the Humana Festival. And so it's a place where new plays go to get developed before they then get produced everywhere. So people fly in the spring to attend this festival, and has a huge reputation. So they have 3 theater spaces. They're running 3 shows constantly throughout the year, and they just have this apprentice and internship program for young people like myself to work behind the scenes for free, and learn the craft and make those connections. So.
And they put you up in a dorm or something like that?
Nope, I had to pay my whole way. So I used to work at Mello's Pizza back in the day. Shout out to Mello's. And I had a paper route. So I was going to DVC. I'd do a paper route in the morning, go to school, and then work at Mello's at night. Or no, I was at Chili's by then. I was waiting tables at Chili's, making the big bucks. And probably still picking up shifts at Mello's on the weekends. So I like saved up like $10,000-$15,000 to go live on food stamps in Kentucky for a year. I remember my rent was $210 a month.
Wow. How did you like Kentucky?
I didn't get to see much of it, and I really kicked myself for not being more adventurous and taking that opportunity, because like I said, we'd work 6 days a week, so we're off like Mondays, so there's not a lot going on. You just want to like sleep in, catch up on laundry, stuff like that. I remember one weekend my roommate was like, I'm going to St. Louis this weekend, we don't have other plans, come with me. And I was like, I'm gonna watch TV. I was like, why didn't I go to St. Louis? Like, when else am I gonna go to St. Louis, you know?
And did you major in theater or?
Yep. Yeah, it's actually interesting because I was mostly a performer at that time, so I was trying to continue that. And there, you had a major, but then you emphasized in a certain area, and so one of them was performance. And for me to graduate, I would have had to stay an extra semester to take this one class that was only offered in the falls or something like that. But like I said earlier, like at that point, I was just like, I just need to get a degree and get on with my life. So I wasn't about to stay longer. So the emphasis that I could get done in the 2 years that I wanted to be there was actually children's drama. So I was like, okay, I'll be a children's drama major, whatever that is. And I think at that point, I had done like a general audition, and I got cast in this play that was based on the children's book called Dragon Wings, which is a story of Chinese immigration in the early days, set in San Francisco. And so I had done a play for kids, and was like, okay, that wasn't terrible. It was still artistic and whatnot. There's a stigma about children's theater, at least there used to be, where it's like less than kind of thing. But I fully embraced it. And I was like, no, this is great. Like, kid performing for kids, they're a completely honest audience. Like, I'd done so many shows where you go and you meet the adults afterwards, and everyone's like, oh, you did a good job. And that's all they say. And you're like, do they mean it? Did they like it? Are they just saying that? Like, it's all so fake. But kids will tell you in the moment as you're performing for them whether or not they like it. And then also through that experience, I just got to, I had a teacher who was really good about bringing international acts to San Diego to perform for a festival, and just seeing how other people interpreted this art form. Lots of highly physical, like kind of clownish type work, but like really like acrobatic, but like strong performance skills from people from South America and from Denmark and all this kind of stuff. So I got into it, and I decided, that's what I'm going to do. So I started, after college, started a theater company that specifically focused on adults performing for families. And that was my jam until I started having too many kids of my own that I couldn't keep burning the candle at both ends and going to rehearsals all night and work a day job and do all that stuff. Well, it's still doing quite well. It's called the Bay Area Children's Theater now. I stepped down in 2010, but got performances all over the Bay Area, lots of education classes for students. So
I know that you also have gotten into cinematography and doing some video work. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that kind of came about, making ends meet, being a, one income family, lived in the Bay Area, 3 kids. So like there's one holiday year I was looking for a little extra money, and this other guy I had worked with had started a recording business, and he was mostly an audio engineer, so he would record symphonies and people's albums out of his home studio and things like that. And he would occasionally need a video person, and he would ask me if I wanted to get involved for a while, and I just was like, I'm not looking to do that right now. But then this one like holiday year, I was like, hey, you got any work? And he's like, yep, come on over. And so I did that, and they were like, we actually want to expand into the theater and dance world, and we, if you're interested, not just being behind the camera, but work on sales and do like kind of expand our business that way. So I was like, yeah, awesome. Those are the people I know. So started doing that probably 2016-ish. And just fell into a lot of mostly education kind of situations. So your kid does a dance recital or puts on a musical. I'm the guy at the back of the room, like recording it, for the most part. But because of my connections at other theaters, I did get to work in more of the professional venues. Usually there's rules around if you can record a union actor. So they'll just do something that's like an archival copy rather than something they're going to use extensively in promotion. But occasionally I get to make a little trailer or commercial for somebody's show, helps sell some tickets, So still doing that now as one of my income sources. COVID definitely changed the landscape. So the company I was working for fortuitously decided to close in 2019, and they're like, hey, if anybody who's working for us wants to buy the gear and keep their clients, you have our blessing. So I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I'll do that. So I put all this money into buying gear in 2019, and I did my projections to like break even on that somewhere in 2020. And then like COVID hit, and all that was gone. So I think I've broken even by now, but I'm not sure by how much. I haven't, kept the books to figure it out. But it was rough to have specifically like a spring calendar that was just full. I was going to be working constantly to people not putting on shows anymore. Companies closing. Everybody moved into Zoom, doing their stuff on Zoom. So if they weren't technically proficient with running a camera before, they had to become proficient just to keep their business going. So a lot of people kind of started doing video stuff in-house instead. So I still have a core group of clients that I really enjoy working with, and actually some really great companies that you know, I want my kids to take classes at, just because of the values that they, you know, express. That I see them behind the scenes as I'm setting up how they talk to their students. And you know, so I'm lucky to continue those relationships, you know, a couple venues throughout the Bay Area. But yeah, that got me behind the camera and just got me thinking about using that as a tool to express myself more. So I'm also trying to get into more like video journalism and tell my side of some stories at different events as well.
Yeah. And then once the pandemic hit, we randomly met up together at the Suburban Homestead Mutual Aid Group, put together by our good friend Suzanne. Suzanne has been a guest on the Natural Freedom League podcast. If you look on the Natural Freedom League page, it's under Detachment Activism with Suzanne. And, you know, just talking about different ways of basically exiting and building out of the system, and trying to find solutions. Suzanne put this group together so local people could, you know, feel comfortable, like that they knew, you know, like-minded individuals in the neighborhood or in the community, that we could support each other. And so one day I go there and there's Jared. So why don't you give us a little breakdown of your personal awakening process and how you ended up in a Suburban Homestead group?
Oh, wow.
You mentioned 9/11 earlier.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big jumping off point for a lot of people.
It was, but not as big as it probably should have been. It's interesting. I can look back. I mean, you know, I'm of a generation that questions a lot of things and doesn't respect authority. So there's just a natural, like, who I've been that doesn't fit in a lot of places, or questions narrative. And so there's always been that thing, but I don't remember really pushing back on a lot of mainstream narrative early on. I remember that Zeitgeist movie having an impact on me. I don't know when I saw it, but that was one of those, like, wait, the Federal Reserve is doing what? Like, kind of experiences, for sure, probably in around 2010, right before or after that. So I think I was a little bit of a late bloomer when it came to things. I remember really going down rabbit holes in like 2012, 2013. And, you know, no theory was left unturned. I was willing to consider, like, everything's a lie, basically, just as a thought exercise alone, to test. And so, like, I still continue to be that way, you know, when I try to talk about things with people and get dismissed, you know, that's not a good feeling. So I try to remain open to anything that anyone's trying to, like, say, well, I've considered this, thought about it that way. So yeah, 2012, 2013, for sure, started to question a lot of things. I remember the Fukushima event in 2011 was a big deal because I was up that night just flipping through channels, and I flipped by the Japanese NHK station, and I saw, like, just this marina and boats. I was like, why are they showing this? And then, like, you just gradually saw, like, the water level, like, increase, and then go to other camera angles. So I watched the tsunami, like, live come in. I saw that footage where, like, the helicopters flying over and the cars, like, turned and drove away, and then the camera was like, well, we're not going to show that, you know, like, those kind of moments, you know. And that had a huge impact on me, just, like, witnessing that first hand. And I had been through things like, you know, the 89 earthquake, and let's go over to Aunt and Uncle's house who has television reception and look at all the traumatic footage. I had been through, like, 9/11, go over to my parents. Like, I had just moved to an apartment, didn't have TV yet when 9/11 happened, but I had to go to my parents' house and watch the footage that night. Like, so I had been through these like traumatizing media experiences, and that's something that I've definitely learned the power of, like, just that exposing ourselves to those events and what it can have, the mental impact it can have on us, that I really am looking to like change now, or have been changing for the last couple of years. You know, I'd rather not watch the footage. Oh, have you seen the new big whatever? I'm like, no, I'm good. Stuff still comes across my feed, so I still know what's going on to some extent. But if there's some big snuff film that's out there, the latest whatever's dying, I'm not gonna check it out because it just doesn't serve me anymore. So I know throughout all this process was like a big like be exposed to every conspiracy and watch all this stuff and watch all the documentaries and hear every perspective on it and why it's bad. But really my work now is to, like I said, like have that be about my past, and now it's about the future and the choices that I want to build the future that I want. Not to continue to allow media in particular to manipulate, because I'm a theater guy, and I've been around enough media to know how easy it is to manipulate with a story. I've probably written a couple of those scripts, and you know, I just don't want to be a part of that.
So when I met Jared, again years later, at Suzanne's house, we connected on social media, and I checked out his YouTube channel. Excuse me. And here is his YouTube channel, and this was the video, and it's pretty short, so I'm gonna go ahead and play it. But he edited it together of this this gentleman named James True, and it is titled "Chemtrails Aren't Real."
Now, chemtrails. Have you ever seen a crop duster? When dust falls out of a crop, it bounces off the ground. At 50 feet or higher, it fails. It's not able to do it. The particulates are too light at that point. It's not able to do its job. But when I watch one plane fly over and stretch literally a square footage of thousands of miles, and I see one plane that has an aerosol spray coming from it, and you want me to believe that they are chemtrailing the entire atmosphere, because that's real. If I wanted chemtrails to make you think that I was disseminating cancer and everyone who breathed it would then have cancer, I wouldn't need to saturate everything. I could fly one plane over every 4 days. And enough people like you who do not prune lips would believe it. And you'd freak out and you'd tell everyone else, and you'd make memes about it, and you'd tell everyone else chemtrails are real, and you'd start a YouTube channel, and you'd have a fucking following like Amazing Polly. And Richie from Boston would have you on, and you'd freak the fuck out about how chemtrails are real and everyone's going to die of cancer. And millions of people would listen to you, and they'd go home and say, we're going to die of cancer because we're breathing in the particulates right now. And those fuckers would get sick. And they get sick because they do not understand the power of the technology of belief. The technology of belief is real. That's why we talk about it every day with prana. That's why we insist you have to stop fucking believing these lies unless you want to believe the prana of what comes with them. And so yes, if you're going to buy chemtrails, right now, you are getting sick. You are making yourself sick right now by believing them. And I'm telling you, I cannot find the zetetic evidence, no matter how much I fucking look, that they're real. I can't. You can show me one picture where Trump's on a plane and there's a box that's labeled chemtrails. And it's the most staged fucking thing you've ever seen. It has all the salaciousness of Pizzagate, all the salaciousness of Epstein Island. It literally has all of it. It's insane how easily we give away every single inch of our discernment. And I'm telling you they're fear porn because I think they are. And if you want to prune my lips, please, dear God, prune my lips. Show me some fucking evidence. But make it evidence. Don't show me how dramatic the meme is that you found. If it's got a billionaire, if it's got a pedophile, if it's got a submarine, if it's got a dentist chair, if it's got pedophilia, if it's got Hollywood, if it's got a blowjob from George Clooney, if it's got nuclear weapons, if it's got Mossad, if it's got terrorism, if it's got every single fucking element that terrifies you, that titillates you, that makes you fear, maybe it's a fucking lie. That maybe the truth is boring. Maybe the truth is painful. Maybe the truth is you not having shoes in winter at night. I'm here to tell you that the reason why you get off of chemtrails is because you don't have to worry about the raccoon that's clawing at your door. Because you get to sit inside and freak out about chemtrails. Because it makes you feel better. It's something you fear that makes you feel better, not worse. There's a reason why all the horror movies are naked titty women running through the forest tripping. Oh, Phil! There's a reason why we call that horror. It's self-soothing. It's fear porn, meaning we're squirting over fear. We're not fixing it, we're squirting over it. Give me the PDF, give me the white paper. Show us. Stop telling everyone else they need to research more until they believe it. That's what Zionists say. Stop. Stop. Guys, be a tribe of one. Smell this stuff. Don't feel it, smell it. Smell everything that comes up. It is the healthiest thing you could do right now to reject chemtrails and look for evidence. And feel the burn. Go out there and go, hey, can you prove to me chemtrails? I want to find out how they're real. Can you please prove this to me? Because all I see are videos talking about how scary they are. And fear is the only contagion that you need to learn how to amalgamate. It's the only one. Sorry for yelling. Are you going to get this?
Yeah, I was 2020. I'm podcast in my ear every waking moment, listening to different people and cracking my head open in lots of different ways while I'm trying to figure out what life is and build a chicken coop and do practical things like that. So James was one of those people at that time that I got exposed to before COVID through a show called the RX Only Picture Show, which is hosted by a friend of mine named SB Alger and James Maiden. And they would do this long format, wacky, esoteric kind of topics show that I was into, and they had the guest Tracy Twyman on quite frequently, who I had mostly heard from Higher Side Chats interviews. And so James became a guest on there for a couple times, and I started following him. And I was out on a walk one day, I think, in that particular rant of his, and I was just seeing these visuals, like everything. In 2016, I was the chemtrail guy. Like, that was my thing. I'm the guy on the street that would just stop and be like, what the fuck is that?
I feel you.
So it just clicked. Like, I had all these visuals. So I had to go home and edit it. And I do this thing where I give myself a little creative box to play in. Like, this can't take more than 3 hours. Go, and you're publishing it at the end of 3 hours, no matter what. I sometimes don't do as well with long timelines that could be never ending. I need the constraint of time or specific limitation of tools or resources available to me to be creative within that box. And that was the video that I did it, and I was like, yeah, I want to put this out there and see what happens. So that's how that came about.
Chemtrails. I was there with you. I remember I was up on Dinosaur Hill. Yes. And I'm like, why is that one plane leaving a streak, but none of the other ones are, right? And then I think it was right after that I heard Prince talking about it. Mm-hmm. On he did an interview and he mentioned it. Yeah. And then it was just everywhere. And then, I work in childcare, so I'd be outside all the time, and I'm just looking up, and just I just remember a good year or two, if not longer, of just always looking up and what's going on. And but then you do get to this level of, is this what we think it is? It's easy enough to go, oh yeah, they're poisoning us, And then you start thinking, well, what if they want us to think they're poisoning us, right? And that's just a whole nother level of contemplating this stuff. I just know that I had moved to a point where I wasn't speaking out about it anymore. And then I discovered James and then some other content creators who were saying that this is something else. This is an energetic war, and this is a way to keep us feeling like we're being poisoned, and keep us in a low vibration, keep us stressed out about what are these things flying in the air. And that took me on a whole nother ride. And then that was the first place I had heard of Benjamin Balderson, was on James's show. And then why don't you talk about how you connected with Benjamin?
Yeah, so that same era, 2020, I start hearing this guy named Ben Balderson talk with James and with Beth Martins in particular, and just was really resonating with everything he was saying. And so he's an off-grid heathen alchemist. He lived up in Redding, California at the time. So I was like, oh, it's where I live. He's close by. But he started to just put words around things that I was feeling about my purpose, how I see life, what I value in life. I mean, in particular, he was breaking down just what is wealth and what is, as an Odinist heathen, he reads the story from the Havamal, and he had this one in particular that was talking about gold versus Golveg versus Fehu, and this idea of what is wealth. And gold, a dragon always wants to hoard gold and have more, but like there's only so much gold you can have that you need, and it doesn't make sense. Whereas someone who lives by the value of what he calls Fehu is only going to want what they can make use of. No one's going to want all the cows in the world, because you can't take care of them, and they're going to die and they're going to go to waste. And so as someone who wants their own land, you're going to aspire to having the amount of cows that you can take care of. And that's what real wealth is, because at the end of the day, that cow can feed you, and just sitting on a hoard of gold doesn't really matter. And just hearing that story in particular really resonated me at the time when I was trying to figure out finances and all that kind of stuff. And so James and Ben started talking about putting together this event. Ben was going to be moving from Reading to Humboldt, and they're going to do this event, and they're going to have people come out and help set up and whatnot. So I reached out and was like, sign me up. I'm 4 hours away. I'll be there. And they had a little falling out in the course of that coming together, actually, where James was trying to put more of like a festival party vibe to it. And Ben was like, I haven't even seen the land yet. I bought the land, but I haven't seen it, so I can't make any promises. So it's starting to fall apart, but I was still tenacious and in touch with somebody who was kind of coordinating volunteer interest. So I was like, I'm here. I got a camera. I can come help tell the story of your move. Like, whatever you need, I'm down. I want that experience. And so it still happened. And in September of 2020, went up to his new property. I didn't even meet Ben when I arrived, because he was still at the old property breaking things down. But I met another guy named Aaron, and Ben's wife Christy, and another woman named Cheryl, and Aaron's son Ellis, just up in Garberville. It was the first people I had met that weren't wearing a mask that were willing to shake my hand in 6 months probably at that point.
Yeah.
I followed them up in my car that wasn't appropriate for the roads, up Murder Mountain in Humboldt County, and spent a week and a half there clearing brush, setting up basic systems, building a bridge across a creek, and just loving every single minute of it. And by the end of the week, Ben arrived with some of the other guys that were helping out with a big U-Haul full of stuff that we unloaded. And I got to do an interview with him that's on that same YouTube page you showed earlier, just talking about his experience in the move. Because by then, he had stopped doing podcasts for a while just to focus on the move. And with the with the issue between James and him, like his side of the story hadn't been told as to like what was going on or why this event was now off, because James was selling tickets to an event that he had to like refund, basically, and there's
Right.
no way. Now, having been to the property, I'm like, there's no way. Like, you're getting cars up here, huge potholes, all these neighbors growing weed. They don't want people around here. Like, there's
Yeah.
there's lots of dangers, and it's not a party place. So yeah, spent a week and a half there, and I really got that firsthand look of what it takes to live off grid and make it happen. I mean, it was the best of circumstances because there's about 10 people who were like me, who had been listening to podcasts, who reached out and wanted to be a part of something bigger, gain skills, build community, all that type of stuff. So we had a great little group of people that did that. And then we had to evacuate because of fire, basically. And so I evacuated home, but they all, were camping at the beach and living in like this heavy, thick smoke for like a week and a half, I think, before they were allowed back on the property. And it was pretty intense. Thankfully, all of his animals were good and no fire came onto the property. But that just started a little relationship. And I got to go back the next month for kind of the culmination of the move-in efforts. And we had a little party there, which was also really great because I had this dream of like, I want land, I want a homestead, I want to do this, I want to do that. And the first week and a half that I was there, it was all the honeymoon, it was all the good stuff. I'm like, in charge of the water tanks and getting water from the spring uphill so it could be gravity fed into the house, and just loving every part of it. And there's all these materials to build with and make a bridge and do this stuff. And then I come back 6 weeks later, and by then the tempo had kind of slowed down a little bit. Some of the guys were tired from working like that every single day, and I got to see a little bit, different look at it, but it was still something I aspired to. And then when I went back the next spring, and it was really just like, and this is what life is like. So every time I go back to Ben's property, I get to see like, this is what it really takes. You can't just live this dream of like, I'm going to go escape and figure it all out like Jeremiah Johnson. It's like there's some shit that happens. And so it's been a blessing to maintain that relationship and get to see the land evolve and see what it really takes. And then to bring those things home and say, okay, I want to do a greenhouse. I want to have a chicken coop. I want to raise rabbits. I'm going to get into solar and start these little things on the scale that I can do them in suburbia, to start to build those skills. Because I know if I just picked up my family and moved to the middle of nowhere tomorrow, we're not going to cut it in 3 months. Like, we're just not ready for that yet. So I need to start building up my ability now, if that's ever going to be in my future. So that's where I first got to meet Ben, and through that process, kind of just documenting his move in through videos, he's like, yeah, I'm going to get back into doing more podcast stuff and host my own. And I offered my assistance. So I'm his producer for Odin's Alchemy, which you can find on Rockfin, mostly for our full episodes, uncensored material. We're in other places, but Rockfin's the best place to find Odin's Alchemy. And we've been doing about a year of episodes right now. And I know Ben just went cross country to present at Flattoberfest in South Carolina, and he's back. Now we're getting settled for kind of season 2 of podcasting there. But yeah, it's been great because not only are the values that Ben speaks of, fulfilling for me to sit, like, I get this great because we'll pre-record a lot of the episodes, and it's just me, like, I'm an audience of one, just listening in to these two, whoever the guests are, like these people whose podcasts I would listen to independently anyway. I remember the first time we had Marty Leeds on, and I'm like, both of you literally saved my life a handful of times in 2020 with the things that you said. And now I'm just sitting here like listening to you both. Like, this is just my own private podcast, and I'm going to go edit it and get it out to everybody else. But how cool is that? So it's been a joy to support in that way.
And then what, 6 months ago or so, you started your own video series called Conspiracy Cinema.
Yeah.
And I was honored to be a guest on one of them. Talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. So as I'm supporting Ben, I, especially a lot in the early episodes, I'm sitting there, as they're talking, visuals come into mind, and I usually think in images from movies, and I talk in 90s music lyrics. Like that's just how I am, like how I express myself. And so in the conversation, people are always just saying these things. I'm like, oh, I know a visual for that. So I'm doing contributing in my way by putting visuals over. I don't do it as much anymore. I let kind of just the conversation happen. But especially because Ben lives off grid and has frequent power outages or animal interruptions, I'd have to get creative about editing episodes together by like putting in some visuals. So that was my task, and I just found myself drawing from a lot of films in particular. And I had all these ideas for like, oh, it'd be great to watch this movie with Ben and a guest. And I pitched him one idea, and it just never happened. I was like, wait, maybe that's my idea. That's my show. So I just, early this year, reached out to a couple of people just to get, I think, 3 episodes piloted out there. John was on the episode with Wag the Dog. And then what else did we do? They Live. They Live was with Aaron, the guy I mentioned that was on the homestead with me. He also goes by the name Snake Jones. And then Ben and Sean did an episode of Holy Mountain, which is this great alchemical tale of just wild visuals, and it's so so great to watch that movie with an alchemist and get his just like gut reaction to it. So put out those 3 episodes, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go from them, but just the formula of getting 2 people together who I follow in different avenues together for a conversation. Like I knew you and Steve had a lot in common for Wag the Dog, and I was like, I wonder how this conversation will go. By putting them together has been really fun. It can be logistically challenging to schedule more than one guest for something at a time. So there's been a couple episodes, some Marty Leeds talking about Neverending Story that never happened. That would have been an amazing episode. So someday we'll make that happen, Marty. But it's just allowed me to be in conversation with people who I listen to and really enjoy, and then watch them vibe off of each other. So I've been able to get James Evan Pilato from Media Monarchy, who I've been collaborating with on some projects, and a listener of his work for probably 6-7 years now. His wife was on an episode. I'm also I broadcast a show called Weaving Spiders Welcome on Saturday nights. They're on YouTube, but we broadcast it to Ben's Rockfin channel on Saturday. So a lot of the Weaving Spiders crew I've pulled in for episodes as well, and other folks from the Media Monarchy community that I'm a part of as well. So, but yeah, just talking about films, talking about the signs and symbols that are in films and what they've been telling us for a long time. Is it a revelation of the method? Is it is art imitating life, or is it the other way around? Just kind of exploring those things. I found myself in a lot of conversations, or listening to a lot of conversations on podcasts, where inevitably somebody like, oh yeah, that's like that movie where blah 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 and blah 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 happens, and then that's it. Like people just make the reference but don't really take it a step further than that. So I really wanted to unpack the step further, and just like what else is there to say about these films, but then ultimately get from a place of the conspiratainment that's possible through talking about all this stuff, and really into action. So with each episode, what I try to do at the end is say, okay, we've talked about all these ideas. We know the New World Order is bullshit, and they're coming for us. They've shown us the game plan. They're already doing it. But what are we going to do about it now? Like, how are we going to take this information and inform art tomorrow? So frequently on those episodes talking about, I wish I was Amish. I just want to go build a barn and be in community. I want to, hey, my solar project is at this stage, right now, and I'm finally powering a couple things with it, just as a way to get people who are maybe stuck in thought into a place of action, because I really do feel like that's the only thing that's going to keep our we had Marshawn Lynch call it our mentals, keep our mentals in check, and keep us growing our way forward. as well. So
Yeah.
that's really important to me, because I think a lot of this awakening of my conspiratorial awakening and journey over the past, we'll call it 10 years now, I have been stuck in that place where it's just like you're just taking in so much information, and it's overwhelming and it's depressing, and it feels like there's nothing you can do and it's futile. So that's not going to be a good place for anybody.
Yeah.
But if there's something that we can pull from it, to try something new tomorrow, take the power back for ourselves to build the lives that we want to live, that's where we need to be operating from.
I could have a lot more questions for you, Jared, but we should probably call it quits.
All
I
right.
appreciate you coming on. That was really fun. And it was great to hear your perspective on what's going on in the world. And I appreciate all the work that you're putting out. I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you. And yeah, man, I think you're solid. You're doing good work, and keep it up, man.
Appreciate that. One part of my journey that I didn't mention was just connecting with you again. And actually, there was a moment where I connected with you before I knew it was you. When I drove by one day and I saw you out with a sign saying,
Yeah.
"What is natural law?" And I just remember going, "Okay, this is different for the community that I live in."
Yeah.
And I was probably listening to a lot of Passio stuff at the time, so like
Yeah.
I may have honked, but I didn't know it was you. But just to know there was someone like you out in the community,
Yeah.
asking that question, made me feel better. And then when we ran into each other at the get together, to be like, oh, okay, someone I've known most of my life, like I can connect with on these topics, has just been, it's really easy to feel isolated and alone when you start to consider different things, or you see just the people around you making choices that you don't agree with. So to have that connection with you in particular has been really just grounding for me. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's been refreshing, because a lot of our generation is just like, I'm like, what happened? Yeah, definitely refreshing to see you and know that we're on the same page. And you kind of even like introduced me to some ideas that even pushed me further. So I appreciate that. And all right, we're going to wrap it up with this video that Jared did. He came out to San Francisco for our boy Mike Mattingly's performance, the Coast to Coast Jam. All right, Jared, you have a good one, brother.
Too.
All right, peace. I'm John. This is Will. We are Natural Freedom League. You can find us at naturalfreedomleague.com. We are out here at the Jam for Freedom.
We're out here talking about natural rights, subjective morality, the causal factors of what's going on in society. It always starts in the mind, in psychology. Yeah,
Handing out info. That's what Natural Freedom League started out doing. Obviously, we turned into a podcast, so you guys can check that out. And out here supporting people with like mind, and try to enlighten people who maybe might not be on the same page.
Yeah, this is all the things you can't see when you're wearing a mask.
Yeah, my name's Neshma Friend, and I started a group called St. Francisco for people who haven't lost their flipping mind, who haven't fallen prey to mass formation psychosis. I know that there were a lot of people who were lonely and isolated, and it's been great because sometimes people have come here and said like, oh, I'm so glad, like I didn't know there was anyone else but me that thought like this. And the thing is, there's actually a lot of us who think like this. People will come along and they'll start hanging out with us, and then they'll say, oh, like what is this group about? And I'll say, well, we just believe that nothing medical should be mandated. Nothing you do to your own body. No one has a right to tell you what to do to your own body, let alone your child's body. So that's what this music is about, and that's what community is about, and also just getting vitamin D on the skin. That's one of the best boosters to your natural immunity.
Who own your body? 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 And who is the who anyway? Yeah. Who own your body? The question of the millennia.